Every fan of martial arts fiction, action films, or comics has likely come across the trope of the blind warrior, or martial arts master. For example, Master Po in Kung Fu, Nick Parker in Blind Fury, Blind Master in G.I. Joe, Chirrut Îmwe in Rogue One, and of course Marvel Comics has Daredevil. The most influential blind warrior character has to be the title character of one of Japan's longest-running film series, Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman, who is based on the novels of Kan Shinozawa. Zatoichi is an onma, or masseur, that also happens to be one of the most skilled swordsmen in all of Japan. Small armies tried to take him down, but due to Zatoichi's skill with the sword and extraordinarily powerful sense of hearing, practically no one can touch him. In reality, there is evidence to suggest that the visually impaired develop heightened performance of their other senses compared to those with normal vision. That being said, the superhuman echolocation awareness of characters like Zatoichi or Daredevil does seem a bit far-fetched. In this video, I want to explore the potential historical or legendary basis for the blind warrior trope, to get an idea of where it came from. But before I begin, I want to clarify that for the purposes of this video, I will not go into detail on modern martial artists or combat athletes with vision impairment, of which there are some amazing examples, like Ronald Dlamini, an MMA champion who continued coaching and teaching after losing his eyesight, Antonio Tenorio Silva, a 4-time Paralympic gold medal winning judo black belt, and Russell Redenbaugh, a multiple championship winning jiu-jitsu black belt. These athletes and martial artists have a ton of my respect, but in this video I'm going to discuss 3 legendary blind warriors, all from actual history, although their deeds in some cases are more myth than fact, but I'll get to that. To begin with, let's start with the possible inspiration for Zatoichi, the blind swordsman, Toda Seigen. Toda was a master swordsman or kengo and retainer of the daimyo Saito Yoshitatsu during the Sengoku period. Toda is likely most well remembered as the possible instructor of the famous swordsman Sasaki Kojiro, who, in turn, is most well remembered for his duel with Japan's most famous swordsman, Miyamoto Musashi. There is debate about whether Sasaki was taught by Toda Seigen directly or through one of his students, but regardless, Toda was considered a master of the Chujoryu sword style and specialized in the Kodachi, which is a type of short sword. Some theorize the reason Toda began studying the Kodachi in the first place was due to his deteriorating eyesight. Close-range attacks would be more effective for someone with vision impairment, and Toda suffered from a serious eye disease since around the age of 30 that eventually left him blind. It's unclear exactly when Toda became blind, but when his illness became serious, he shaved his head and handed clan leadership over to his younger brother. After this, Toda was reputedly called the Blind Swordsman in his local village, much like Zatoichi. Toda's most famous fencing match occurred in 1560 at what was later named Gifu Castle. Lord Saito wished to test Toda's Kodachi ability against a kengo named Umezu from the school of Shinto-ryu. There are multiple anecdotal and legendary accounts of this match, and in some of these, Toda was said to be completely blind when he fought Umezu. In truth, Toda was likely, at most, partially blind during this match, or in the early stages of his eye disease, but still able to see his opponent clearly enough. Because Toda did go blind eventually, it is a bit more romantic to remember him as a blind swordsman. During the match, Umezu was equipped with a 3-foot wooden staff, while Toda, to make things even more difficult for himself, abandoned his wooden kodachi, preferring instead to use a literal piece of firewood, only 1 foot in length. As soon as the match started, Toda struck Umezu repeatedly with his firewood on the head and arms, causing him to drop his staff. Infuriated by this, Umezu then drew his wakizashi. But dodging this counterattack, Toda was able to land a brutal finishing blow, which left his opponent bloodied and beaten. Blind or not, this was an impressive feat by the master swordsman, but accounts of the blind swordsman became folklore. While Toda was a real warrior, he more than likely didn't enter into battle blindly, unlike the next warrior on this list who, by all accounts, did. John the Blind of Bohemia was the son of the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VII, but married into the throne of Bohemia in the present-day Czech Republic. Bohemia was part of the Holy Roman Empire at the time. Like Toda Seigen, John's career as a warrior began with unimpaired vision. However, he also lost his eyesight due to an eye disease, in his case called ophthalmia, and is thought to have become fully blind in 1336 while crusading in Lithuania. Despite this, John maintained his position not only as a figurehead, but a military commander, and as he would later prove, a king unafraid of fighting in battle personally. At the onset of the 100 Years' War, John allied with King Philippe VI of France, and in 1346, his troops aided Philippe at the Battle of Crécy. Without going into detail on the battle, the French and their allies suffered a devastating loss to the English, led by King Edward III. Philippe and his allies attempted an estimated 15 charges on the English lines, but due to their archers and effective use of the English longbow, all of the charges were unsuccessful. The bravest charge, however, was led by the blind king of Bohemia. Saying he wished to strike at least one stroke with his sword, John had his men tie their horses' reins and bridles to his, and in this manner, he led a charge into the English lines. This charge was initially successful and one of the more promising of the many failed charges from the French side. However, John and his men were eventually cut down. Following the battle, John's body was found near that of his horse, which still had its reins tied to those of his men. Before this final charge, John had been advised to flee the battle, but reputedly replied, "Far be it that the king of Bohemia should run away. Instead, take me to the place where the noise of the battle is the loudest. The Lord will be with us." What he lacked in eyesight, John the Blind clearly made up for with cojones of steel. In the following century, another blind Czech military commander, General Jan Žižka, would also command his troops in battle after first losing one eye and then eventually the second. But I won't go into detail on him in this video. While we can safely say that John the Blind's charge did happen, the dramatic finale of the following legend is likely just a legend. The historical figure it concerns was real, but his deeds after becoming blind most likely weren't. The final blind warrior on this list is Prithviraj Chauhan III, who was the 12th century king of the Chahamana dynasty in what is today Rajasthan, Haryana, and Delhi, India. During his reign, Prithviraj won a number of battles against rival Indian rulers before the conflict for which he is best remembered. Against Muhammad of Ghor, aka Muhammad Ghori, and the Ghorid dynasty from present-day Afghanistan. Muhammad of Ghor moved in on Prithviraj's territory, and this sparked a series of battles between the two rulers. It's unclear exactly how many times they fought, but all agree Prithviraj won the first Battle of Tarain in 1191, before Muhammad of Ghor returned and got the better of Prithviraj in the second Battle of Tarain in 1192, during which Prithviraj was captured. Muhammad of Ghor attempted to keep Prithviraj as a vassal, but after an attempted rebellion, he was sentenced to death. And this is where the legendary accounts of Prithviraj Chauhan as a blind archer come into play. In the epic poem Prithviraj Raso, Prithviraj is blinded after his capture. Hearing of this, the poet Chand Bardai, not coincidentally the same poet who composed the Prithviraj Raso poem, baited Muhammad of Ghor into attending an archery performance by Prithviraj. During the performance, Prithviraj heard Muhammad of Ghor's voice and released his arrow in that direction, killing his rival with a single shot. After this, Prithviraj and Chand Bardai killed each other in a double suicide to avoid execution at the hands of their enemies, at least according to the poem. According to historical sources, Muhammad of Ghor was assassinated more than a decade after the death of Prithviraj. But it is a good revenge story concerning a real historical figure, and one that may have influenced the trope of the blind warrior in fiction. Those are the 3 best examples I can find of historical or legendary blind warriors. While there weren't many, and even less that were historical, I found it interesting to explore the roots of iconic characters like Zatoichi the Blind Swordsman or Daredevil. If I missed any historical or legendary blind warriors that you know of, please mention those in the comments below, and suggest any movies or shows you'd like me to investigate the history or mythology behind. If you enjoyed this video, you will likely also enjoy my video on the real history behind Ridley Scott's film The Duelists, as well as my breakdown of the real pirate history behind One Piece, linked on the screen. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos like this. For those of you that have been waiting, I have several anime breakdowns coming up, so stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching, and until next time.